So, very good morning to all, and I welcome you all to this third session of this webinar series. In previous session, we discussed about the two methods, AHP method and data envelopment analysis, DA method. AHP method will help you to check the consistency of your judgment, whereas the DA method will help you to provide you the exact weights when the range of weight is provided. Now we will see how to get the automatic weights in case of basically the methods which are in the second category. So that is DOE based MADM methods. Can you see my screen now?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, fine. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So as we know, basically we use the methods like Taguchi method and response surface modeling in order to basically to deal with this type of DOE based MADM methods. However, actually if you see, both these methods are suitable for single objective optimization. It means when we consider multiple conflicting criteria, the Taguchi methods or RSM method most of the times they will provide the different set of solutions for different objectives. So let us demonstrate this with the help of small example. Can you see the case study on screen?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yes. So let us consider a case study of laser surface treatment process of aluminum alloy plate. And here we consider, suppose, the objectives as a crack length and porosity on the treated surface. The factors which we consider here are the focus position, then pulse energy, gas type, and pulse duration. So we consider these 4 factors. And each factor is considered at 3 levels. So for example, the focus position is +1 at level 1, +2 at level 2, +3 at level 3, and so on. Then similarly, gas type is oxygen at level 1, nitrogen at level 2, and air at level 3, and so on. So as we know, basically in case of Taguchi method, the performance is evaluated based on average SN ratio and not based on actual values of responses. Therefore, here we need to find out the SN ratios. So as we know, basically SN ratio is a signal to noise ratio. The signal means controllable factors. The controllable factors produces desired effect, while noise are the uncontrollable factors. They produces undesired effect. Naturally, for the robust design, we have to minimize the effect of uncontrollable factors. And naturally, therefore, the SN ratio is to be maximized, because S stands for the signal and N for noise. So here we have to set the controllable factors in such a manner that the effect of uncontrollable factor will be minimized. So this is possible when we maximize the SN ratio. Now, as discussed earlier in previous lecture, suppose in this particular case we have 4 factors and at 3 levels. Therefore, in fact, if we go with full factorial design, then we need 3⁴, that is 81 experiments. However, if we use the Taguchi method, then we need to perform only 9 experiments. It means that we will be using L9 orthogonal array to get the same effect. So let us apply Taguchi DOE method for the first objective, that is the crack length. So here we conduct 9 experiments, and the data for the crack lengths for all these 9 experiments is gathered. Then for SN ratio will be determined based on the what is your actually goal. For example, you can see here, if our goal is to minimize the response, for example, usually the surface roughness is to be minimized. In that case, we choose smaller the better, and the SN ratio will be -10 log to the base 10 of 1 by n summation of I is equal to 1 to n yi square, where n is the number of replications and yi that represent basically the particular response. Similarly, if your target, if you're the target the response and you want to base the SN ratio on means and standard deviation, in that case we go for nominal the weighted, and the formula is SN ratio is equal to 10 log to the base 10 of mu square upon sigma square, where mu is the mean and sigma is the standard deviation. And similarly, when the goal is to maximize the response, then we use larger the weighted. Now, since in this particular case, here we want to minimize the crack length, therefore we will use the SN ratio formula as minus 10 log to the base 10. And in our case, since we consider only one replication, therefore it will be the minus 10 log to the base 10 of the square of response. So thus here we obtain accordingly the SN ratio. So we conduct the 9 experiments as per the L9 orthogonal array. And for these 9 experiments, we calculate the SN ratio as minus 10 log to the base 10 of square of the response. Then once you find out SN ratio, then actually our objective is to find out that particular level for which the average SN ratio is maximum. So therefore what we do here, then we will find out the average SN ratio for each level of every factor. So for example, for factor focus position at level 1, what we do, that we consider the SN ratio at level 1 of this particular factor. So we select this, then we select this, and we select this. So we can see the SN ratio at level 1 for the factor focus positions are considered, and you can see the average over here is minus 57.81. In similar manner, suppose if I want to find out the average SN ratio for say the factor G gas type and at level 3, then what we can do, that we consider the SN ratio at all 3 levels, that is this one, then this one, and this one. So we consider this one for the gas type, we consider level 3. And then we can see here the average is minus 54.36, which is written over here. In the similar manner, we can find out the average SN ratios for basically all levels for each factor, every factor. And then we will consider that level for which this maximum average SN ratio is maximum. For example, if you see the first row for focus position, the SN ratio, average SN ratio is maximum at level 2. Similarly, if we see the second second factor, then the average SN ratio is maximum again at level 3. For gas type, it is at level 1, and for this last factor, it is at level 3. So thus we can observe over here that the optimum combination here is 2, that is for the focus position. Then the pulse energy, it is 2. Then this gas type, it is 1, and pulse duration, it is 3. So 2, 2, 1, 3 is the optimum combination, and these are actual values for corresponding to this coded values. Now it means that if I conduct the experiment with this particular levels or with this particular values, then it ensures that the effect of the uncontrollable factors will be minimum. But now let us consider another factor, say for example porosity. Then for porosity again we will apply the same process. So we gather the data of porosity for all these 9 experiments, and then we find out the SN ratio. Here the porosity is also to be minimized. Therefore, we apply the same formula to calculate the SN ratio. And then again with the same procedure we can find out the optimum factor level. Then we can observe here the optimum level here for the porosity is 3211. Thus it is, we can observe that for the crack length the optimum level was 2213, whereas for the porosity the optimum level is 3211. It means that these 2 levels are different. And moreover, one interesting fact here, you can see that both these levels, that is 2213, it is not available actually in these 9 experiments. Similarly, this 3211 is also not available in these 9 experiments. But it means that basically we get these levels not from only these 9 experiments, but from all those 81 experiments, which otherwise we would have considered for full factorial design. Now we can see here, since this basically the level combinations are different, but both these particular factors, they are equal, they are important for us. So both these particular responses, they are important for us. Then the issue here is that how basically to get a unique value of that particular combination which produces best process performance with respect to all objectives. Because here we consider only 2 objectives, that is crack length and porosity. but there might be many more. For example, heat affected zone, surface roughness, etc. for the same problem. Then how to get a unique level combination which will produce the best process performance with respect to all objectives simultaneously? This is the issue. And thus now it becomes a multi-criteria decision-making problem. Now, in fact, if you see in the literature, many approaches they have been proposed by researchers to solve this type of problem. For example, the weights are decided for different objective by using methods like AHP or GRA or this type of methods, or even sometimes the methods for objective weights like the for example, these methods for these objective weights also can be used. But if you observe here that all these methods have certain limitation. For example, so if you consider AHP, then here weights obtained by AHP need not be consistent. If you consider the gradation analysis, then we know that basically in gradation analysis there is a parameter known as a gradational coefficient, and this parameter is to be adjusted. Now again, if this and actually the weights are highly sensitive to this particular parameter, it means that if you are not able to actually get appropriate value of this gradational coefficient, then we are not sure whether these weights are correct or not. And to overcome these particular issues, we will use a method which is known as the principal component analysis. And in principal component analysis, we do not require that the weights to be supplied externally, but the weights are determined internally by the process itself. So principal component analysis is basically a technique for dimensionality reduction. In statistics or machine learning, we use this term very frequently. So dimensionality reduction is the process of reducing number of random variables under consideration by obtaining a set of principal variables. What we are going to do, it means what we are going to do here is that suppose we have three suppose objectives, then we will be converting those three objectives into a single objective. So this is how basically, this is what we call as a dimensionality reduction. And this can be done by basically solving an eigenvalue and eigenvector problem. And whatever the new variables we define, they are defined by the data set at hand. It means that basically these are determined by the process itself and not clearly. It means that we do not require to feed those weights externally. And therefore, this particular characteristics makes PCA an adaptive data analysis technique. So we will now discuss the application of this principal component analysis method for an application examples of laser beam machining process. Okay. Now for this particular process, now let us consider here the 5 parameters, and every parameter is considered at 3 levels each. So gas pressure varies from 7 to 11 bar. This is basically these are the parameters for laser beam machining process. So we have to optimize the laser beam machining process by considering these 5 variables. So gas pressure is there, then cutting speed is there, which varies from 2500 to 3500 mm per minute. Then laser power is there. Then pulse frequency is there, and standoff distance. And accordingly, the values of all these particular variables corresponding to their coded levels are mentioned here in this particular table. Now, in this particular case, since we have 5 objectives or 5 responses, or sorry, we can say 5 variables, and every variable is considered at 3 level. Therefore, number of experiments required here are 18 by Taguchi method. It means that we will be using L18 orthogonal array. So this is L18 orthogonal array, and then we will be conducting those 18 experiments, and responses considered here are curve width, taper angle, and surface roughness. So these are the 3 responses. So curve width is to be minimized, taper angle is also to be minimized, and surface roughness is also to be minimized. So all these 3 particular responses are to be minimized. Then we conduct these 18 experiments, and we gather this particular data for all these responses. Now what is the next task? The next task, what we have to do here, that we have to find out now the SN ratios. Since just like Taguchi method, here also our objective is to design a robust process. Therefore, we will similar to Taguchi method. Here we will we will not use the actual values of the responses, but we will use the SN ratios of those particular responses. So therefore here we consider the SN ratios for these three particular responses. Again, we use the same formula which we discussed in Taguchi method, since here all the three objectives are required to be minimized. So by using this particular formula, then we can find out the SN ratios for these three responses. The next task is that, again, since we are going to going for dimensionality reduction, so it means that we have to numerically add this particular data for the three responses, and which is not possible directly because these three responses are having again at different units. So therefore, to bring them to common platform, we normalize this particular data. So the normalization depends upon whether your responses are to be maximized or to be minimized. Now, if it is in this particular case, the response is to be minimized. So the formula which we use here is this. If you see in this particular formula bar, that is, we consider a particular SN ratio minus we calculate here the maximum of this particular column, and this is minimum value of this column. So we find out this this particular normalized SN ratio as a particular value minus minimum of this particular column divided by maximum minus minimum of this particular column. So this is how we normalize the SN ratio. But instead of, suppose this response was to be maximized, then in that case what we do that we consider the maximum value of this particular column minus the particular value divided by maximum minus minimum value of this particular column. So this is this way, depending upon whether your objective is to be maximized or minimized, we can actually normalize the SN ratios. So thus here we normalize the SN ratios for all the three responses. Then what we need to do, then basically here we need to find out two things. One is the covariance and second is the standard deviation. This is because here we have to prepare the correlation matrix. Now here we use the Pearson correlation coefficient. As we know, Pearson correlation coefficient can be obtained as a ratio of covariance between these two particular responses divided by the product of standard deviation of the two responses. So we know that covariance is basically a measure of how much two random variables vary together. So it is similar to variance, but where variance tells you about the single, how basically single variable varies, the covariance will tell you how the two variables vary together. So the covariance is calculated using this particular formula. What we have to do here, it is summation of xi minus x bar, where x bar is the average value of that particular column. So x is the first variable and y is the second variable. So we take the summation of the product of the difference between that particular value minus average value of the first variable and the difference, and this particular difference between the actual value and the average value of the second variable. So this way now, and divided by the number of data points. So in our case it is 18. So for example, to calculate the SN, to calculate the covariance between these two particular responses or SN ratios, what we do now, that we first find out the average. So we find out the average of this column, then we find out this average of the second column. So first find out the average of these two columns, and then subtract this particular average from this value multiplied by this value minus the average of this particular column, and this we have to do for all data points. Then take the sum of that and divide it by the number of data points. This is how we can obtain the covariance. Similarly, we can obtain the standard deviation. This is the very regular formula for calculating standard deviation. So in Excel, these two functions are directly available, so we can use them to find out covariance and the standard deviation. So that's what we. So obviously, since in this particular case there are three responses, so there will be actually three covariances. First between that is curve width and taper angle. Second between curve width and surface roughness, and third between the taper angle and the surface roughness. So thus there will be actually three responses. So now we calculate here the covariance between, this is the covariance between curve width and taper angle. This is covariance between this taper angle and surface roughness, and this one represents the covariance between curve width and the surface roughness. So our next task is to find out the covariances. There will be three covariances. Now then we can find out the standard deviation. So we have to find out the standard deviation of each column. So thus the standard deviation for the first column, that is the curve width, it is 0.225. The standard deviation for the second column, it is 0.283, and the standard deviation for the third column, it is 0.303. So thus we have three covariances and the three standard deviations. Now what we do now, that we prepare now this correlation Pearson correlation matrix. So one thing is very clear. So this matrix will tell you how much basically two covariances are correlated to each other. Now here we may get a positive sign of covariance or negative sign of covariance also. A positive sign of covariance represents that these two variables, they move to the same direction, whereas a negative covariance means that two variables are moving in the opposite direction. So it is very clear that when we compare curve width with curve width, then naturally the correlation is 1, because they are 100% correlated to each other. Therefore we consider this value 1. So we can see all diagonal values are 1 here. Now what is the correlation between curve width and the taper angle? So how will you find out this value? This value is obtained by using this formula. So to obtain this correlation, this particular correlation between curve width and taper angle, we find out this covariance. First we consider covariance between this curve width and taper angle, so which is 0.035 divided by the standard deviation of curve width multiplied by standard deviation of the taper angle. So standard deviation of this particular curve width, it is 0.225, and standard deviation for this taper angle is 0.283. So thus we obtain this value as 0.035 divided by 0.225 multiplied by 0.283. So this is how we get the correlation between curve width and the taper angle. In similar manner, we can find out the correlation between all other responses. And we can prepare now this particular table of correlation. Now, once we prepare this correlation table, next we have to find out now the eigenvalues, because we know what the significance of eigenvalues is, that the eigenvalue basically they represent actually the weights. That is in what manner basically the first we obtain in what manner basically these two the responses are correlated to each other, and then next step is find out eigenvalue of this particular matrix in order to get the weights of these particular responses. So what we do now, so of course you can find out eigenvalue by any method, but I will demonstrate here that how we can use the a program which we can do it in this Octave software. So what we are going to do here, that we are going to input this matrix, right? It is Octave software is open source software and it is just like MATLAB. So we input this particular matrix here, and we will try to find out the eigenvectors and eigenvalues of this particular matrix. So we'll input this matrix. So we input this matrix, and then simply we can use this command to get eigenvalues and eigenvectors. So we can observe here these are the eigenvectors and the eigenvalues. So we can use this particular values of eigenvectors and eigenvalues here. So this is copied over here, the same values. And then we can see the eigenvalues here are 1.699 for the response 1, then 0.985 for the response 2, and 0.314 for the response 3. Now to get the weights, but obviously here the sum must be 3. because there are 3 responses. Now since our sum of weights must be equal to 1, I can simply normalize this particular values. So for normalization, we divide this value by its sum. So I will get 0.566 as weight for the first response, 0.382 for second response, and 0.105 for the third response. So obviously, if we take the sum, then it is 1. So it means that basically these weights are determined by this particular process automatically. Now then, this we will be using now to find out principal components. We will use this particularly the eigenvectors. So what we do now here, so these are eigenvectors. So this first row will be used to find out the PC1, that is principal component 1. Then second row to find out a principal component 2, and the third row to find out principal component 3. So what we do here, so how will you find out PC1? Then here you can see we already have a normalized SN ratios for curve width. So we take it as, so this is Q5 is this particular data multiplied by this value, that is basically eigenvector for the first response. So it is minus 0.435 plus this value, that is R5, multiplied by 0.782 plus this value, that is 0.660 multiplied by 0.445, and this is how we can find out the PC1. To find out PC2, we use second row now. That is, how do you get this particular value of PC2? Is for the first row, that is 0.613 multiplied by 0.710. Then here plus 0.686 multiplied by minus 0.004 and plus 0.660 multiplied by 0.703. So this is how we can find out PC2. Similarly, we can find out PC3 by considering now the eigenvectors in the third row. Now, already we obtain eigenvalues, and since the eigenvalues represent weights of this particular principal components, what we do now, that again we will multiply these values of principal components by corresponding weights. So thus here the weight for the first particular principal component is 0.566. For second one it is 0.328, and for third one it is 0.105. So we multiply this value 0.564 multiplied by 0.566 plus 0.896 multiplied by 0.382 plus minus 0.399 multiplied by 0.105. So when we do this particular calculation, then we can find out the value of total principal component. It is 0.572. So this 0.572 is basically the score, or we can say basically the, just like it is a SN ratio, but now we can see basically this SN ratio we obtain it is a unique SN ratio considering the effect of all the 3 SN ratios, right? So thus here we can find out now the total principal component index. So this is how we can now, in the similar way, now we can use it, just drag it, then we can calculate this total principal components of all these particular 18 values. Now 18 experiments. Now once we get it, the next procedure is just like our Taguchi method. In Taguchi method, we consider this particular, for a particular factor, we consider particular levels in, and then we take average of that in order to get the average SN ratio. So here now here we will be finding out average TPCI for each level. For example, basically this is actually the level values for the last. You can see this is the last factor, and these are the level values for the last factor. And suppose we want to last factor, and suppose if you want to find out at level 3, what we can do now here, we consider the total principal component index at level 3, all 3 levels, and then we take average. So if you see the average over here, the average is 1. Sorry, this plus here also. Yes. So we can observe it is 0.493, and that is written over here. So in similar manner, then we consider these factor levels, all these particular factors, and accordingly we can find out the average TPCI for each level. And then the next task is same, since again here we need to maximize, because TPCI also representing here SN ratio. So here we will, for every particular row, for every particular factor, we will find out the maximum value of this average TPCI. For example, for the first factor, it is at level 1. Similarly, this is also at level 1. For factor C, it is at level 2. For factor D, it is at level 2 and factor it is at level 3. So thus it is 1, 1, 2, 2, 3 is basically the optimal level combination. So it means that if we set these parameters at this level, then the idea here is that if I use these parameters level parameters of the levels 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, then we will get basically we will get the process performance, or we can say we can get the process performance robust not only from a single response point of view, but from all the 3 responses. So this is what actually the beauty of this particular algorithm. So this algorithm is able to find out. The first thing is that we don't have as such anything to do to assign the weights, because the weights are obtained internally by the process itself. And second thing is that by considering those weights, the principal component analysis is able to find out the best combination which will take care of all those particular responses. So this is how the principal component analysis is used actually to determine these weights automatically. So this is what we have discussed about the problems in second category, that is the DOE based MADM methods. So we have discussed the 2 type of methods, that is basically the AHP method and the DA method to solve the to get the weights in first category problem. Then that is the MADM problems. Then for solving the second category problem, that is DOE based MADM problem, we use here the principal component analysis method. And now we will move towards the next method, or basically we will discuss about the methods used to solve the problems in third category. So that is the multi-objective decision making. And one such algorithm which can be used to find out these automatic weights is the multi-objective artificial B-Colony algorithm. In fact, this algorithm is the extension of original artificial B-Colony algorithm and is proposed by us only, and is also published in a Journal of Computational Design Engineering. So we will now discuss the steps of this algorithm through an application example related to process optimization of abrasive water jet machining process. Okay, fine. So thus we will now discuss the multi-objective artificial B-Colony algorithm. So if you see these examples in this multi-objective decision makings, then there are several techniques to solve basically these problems. Those are categorized as traditional methods and non-traditional methods. Traditional methods include linear programming, non-linear programming, integer programming, geometric programming, and many such methods. Whereas non-traditional techniques, they are basically again classified as evolutionary methods and non-gradient probabilistic methods. Evolutionary methods again classified as methods those evolved in genetics, whereas second category is those methods which evolved in social behavior. Examples of the first category are genetic algorithm, mimetic algorithm, and many more this type of algorithms. For example, then the algorithm which evolved in social behavior, particles optimization, artificial B-Colony and colony optimization, and many such more algorithms. Similarly, non-gradient probabilistic algorithms like similarity tunneling, tabu search also can be used. Now here the question is, if so many traditional methods are already available to solve this type of problems, then why we should go for the non-traditional methods? Actually, to explain this, explain the reason for this particular problem, let us consider a single variable problem. So let us consider single variable x, and this is the objective function value. So thus here the f of x varies with x in this particular manner. Please note that here I can see the or I can plot the graph because it is a single variable problem only. But you can see, okay, even if it is a two-dimensional problem, then also I can have a 3D plot. But most of the time in real life situations, we have many variables, and then naturally in that case, we cannot actually visualize how is the variation of the function with respect to those variables. But for demonstration purpose, let us consider a single variable, and we see the variation of this particular function value with respect to the variable. Now here issue is that, as we know that most of the traditional methods which we have discussed in this first category, those are gradient based methods. Gradient based methods means basically are derivative based approaches. It means that whenever the gradient or the derivative becomes zero, those algorithms will stop searching because according to the threshold is reached. So now, and we know that in most of the cases we have to start with initial solution. Now let us consider this particular problem in which here we have two minima. This is so this is our first minima and this is second minima, right? So out of which this is called as a local minimum solution, and this is a global minimum solution. Obviously, if I consider the bounds of x from this to this, then naturally our interest is to get this solution, this value. So, but now suppose if you start with some initial solution, say at this particular, so let us consider this as initial value of x, and then a corresponding objective function value is this one, and then if you use the traditional method, then it will start searching, and finally at this particular point, if you observe, the slope becomes 0, or the derivative or the gradient becomes 0. Now since the gradient is 0, it means that according to that particular algorithm the solution is reached. So therefore it will not climb the hill, and therefore it will stuck to the local optimal solution. So it cannot find out basically this global optimal solution. So to overcome this particular problem, we use basically the methods in second category. That is basically those methods which work in a probabilistic manner. So therefore, suppose if we use a genetic algorithm which works on probabilistic manner, then here the idea is that even if I start with this particular solution, but the algorithm should have a capability to climb the hill, and therefore it should be able to find out the global optimal solution. So here our objective is to make the solution independent of the, or you can say the optimal solution independent of the initial solution. So the traditional methods are highly sensitive to the initial solution, whereas the non-traditional methods are relatively less sensitive to the initial solution. So that is what the difference between these two particular methods. Now coming to artificial bee colony algorithm, basically this algorithm is developed by Karabuga in 2005 to model the intelligent behavior of honeybee swarms. So we know that basically if you consider the honeybee ecosystem, then we'll find three bees actually: the onlooker bees, then employed bees, and the we can say the scout bees. What is employed bee? Employed bee has already discovered the food source and it is on the job of collecting that particular food. Whereas onlooker bees, presently they are not assigned to any food source, but they are in search of those particular food source. Now, but the onlooker bees, they have to now decide where to go, right? So that depend here. Obviously, the objective here is to maximize the food, maximize the amount of food. So naturally, what they will do, all those particular onlooker bees, they will observe the waggle dance performed by the employed bees. It means that basically employed bees will share the information about the food source to which they are assigned to the onlooker bees. So by means of their waggle dance, that depends upon how much intensity of the waggle dance and for how much time they perform the waggle dance. The intensity basically here represent what is the richness of the food source, and the time for which the waggle dance is performed represent how much is the distance of that particular food source from their head. So thus we can see here both this information about the distance of that particular distance of that food source and also the richness of the food source is shared by the employed bees to the onlooker bees by means of performing the waggle dance. Now accordingly, all onlooker bees are observing that waggle dance, and they will now decide which bee to follow. Naturally, they will follow that bee which is assigned to the food source which is rich in nectar and at the same time which is close to their hive. Therefore, the distribution, or we can say the distribution of onlooker bees to these particular employed bees will be according to the richness of the food source. Similarly, there will be some scout bees. The scout bees, since it is a probabilistic algorithm, so we start with initial solution. But if the initial solutions are not able to explore and exploit the search space completely, then to take care of that, we generate some random solutions. So here the random solutions are generated by means of scout bees. It means that here the scout bee will not observe the waggle dance. So it means that it will not get biased with the information provided by those particular employed bees, but it will simply start searching randomly. So this is how basically this concept is introduced in this particular algorithm. So first step is the parameter selection. So already we have discussed here, we have to select the number of employed bees, then onlooker bees and scout bees. So here, this is just like initial solution. Basically, almost all these non-traditional methods except similar tiling, they work with population of solution. It means that we have to consider number of initial solutions. So that is called as the population size. So it means that suppose I consider 5 solutions, then population size is 5. So then number of employed bees also will be 5. So thus here number of employed bees is usually equal to the population size. Number of onlooker bees will be most of the time by the thumb rule we consider number of onlooker bees as 2 means twice of the employed bees plus 1. For example, if the employed bees are 5, then onlooker bees will be 11 and so on, minimum 11. So we may consider the onlooker bees more than that also. And the number of scout bees are usually considered as 5 to 30% of this basically total of this employed plus onlooker bees. Next one, we have to calculate the nectar amount of each food source. So here basically we have to find out the nectar amount, how much is the richness of that particular food source. But if you observe here, we are discussing about the multi-objective method. If it was a single objective method, then in that particular case we can directly use the value or the whatever the value of that objective function. It means that suppose we have given some variables and then we have given some model, as already we have discussed in previous sessions, that in case of multi-objective method we have to design a model. So either explicit or implicit, but we must have a model with us. And then substituting the values of variables in that particular model, I can find out the objective function. Now, if it was a single objective function, then a single objective optimization, then I would have considered directly the objective function values. But since here we have to go with the, we have to consider multiple objectives. So we cannot directly consider the objective function value of any of those objectives. So therefore, what we do now here the food source are evaluated based on their shared fitness value. So this is important. So here we will not go with actual fitness value, but we will find out the shared fitness value. Now, what is the procedure to find out shared fitness value now? So here shared fitness values are obtained by the concept of non-dominated sorting. So what do you mean by the what is non-dominated sorting, or what is here we classify all the solutions. For example, suppose here population size is 10. So there are 10 solutions I considered. Then I have to classify these solutions as a dominated solutions or non-dominated solution. What is how will you decide that? For that one, the criteria is given by this equation. That suppose we have 2 objectives. Then if the objective 1 is inferior to first value, it means that see here over here. So here let us consider first solution. So if the first solution when compared with second solution, I is first solution, J is second solution. When the first solution objective function value of first solution is inferior to the objective value of second solution, similarly for the first objective. Similarly for objective 2 also, the function value of first solution is inferior to the function value of second solution. It means that the solution under consideration is inferior with respect to all the objective functions while considering any of these remaining particular solutions. Then we classify or we consider that particular solution as a dominated solution. Otherwise it will be a non-dominated solution. So that's so likewise we classify the solutions as a dominated solutions or non-dominated solution. Now let us say for an example, here by applying this criteria we consider that suppose solution 1, solution 5 and solution 9, they got status of non-dominated solutions. Naturally then remaining solutions, they will be now dominated. So now here what we do now, those solutions which get the dominated non-dominated status in the first sorting are rank 1 solutions. So thus we can see here the solution number 1, solution number 5 and solution number 9. So these 3 solutions basically they got the non-dominated status in the first sorting itself, and therefore these 3 solutions are called as, or they are classified as rank 1 solutions. What we do next then, but the process is to be continued till all the solutions get non-dominated status. So what we do now, the remaining solution will go for second sorting. So again, the procedure is repeated. Here also, every solution will be checked for its dominance, and then we again some solutions again may get non-dominated status. For example, here solution number 2 and solution number 7, they got non-dominated status in second sorting. So they will be now the solution 2 and 7. Solution 7 will be rank 2 solution. Remaining solutions will again go for third sorting, and likewise. So that you can observe here, all the 10 solutions finally they got non-dominated status, and the but with a different rank. So solution 159 with rank 1, solution 27 with rank 2, 368 rank 3, and 4 and 10 rank 4. So thus we classify basically the solutions into different ranks. What is next step? Now once we get this, then we have to now evaluate the shared fitness. So for shared fitness, what we do now here? So what we do here, we can see that let us consider this particular sample problem. That suppose we have 3 variables x1, x2, x3, and suppose we have 2 objective functions z1 and z2. z1 is to be minimized and z2 is to be maximized, and the bounds of those particular variables are given to you. And let us assume that by applying that previous procedure, let us consider that solution number 1, solution number 3, and solution number 5, they suppose they got non-dominated status in the first sorting. Therefore, we call that as rank 1 solutions. Whereas solution number 2, so these are rank 1 solutions, and solution number 2 and solution number 4, these are rank 2 solutions. So suppose thus we have the 1, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4 rank 1 solutions, and 2 and 5, these are rank 2 solutions. Now, next what we have to do now, then we have to find out Euclidean distance. So I can now find out Euclidean distance between these 2 solutions. So I will find out Euclidean distance between solution 1 and 2, and that is, of course, the Euclidean distance between solution 1 and 1 is always 0. So therefore we can see the diagonal values are all zeros. So we can observe here all the diagonal values are 0. This distance between 1 to 2, Euclidean distance between 1 to 2 is obtained as 0.824. Euclidean distance between 1 to 3 is 0.860, and so on. So thus here we find out Euclidean distance between every 2 solutions. Then what next we do now? So here we have to find out now how much is the amount of sharing. So to find out amount of sharing, what we do, we subtract the in fact either you can take a reciprocal of this particular distance values, or we can subtract these values from 1. It means that, for example, 1 minus square of this value, we will get 0.321. So this is how basically we can find out the sharing. Sharing is basically, it means that more is the distance, lesser will be sharing. You can observe here the distance was 0, sharing is 100%. It means that solution 1 is 100% shared with solution 1. And the distance between solution 1 and 2 was 0.824, and the amount of sharing is 0.321. So it means that sharing is basically inversely proportional to the distance. Now, what we do now, once we get this data for what is the sharing value, sharing values, then we take the sum of all this for the first solution. We take the sum of all the sharing values, and then we get this Nishcomb. So we can observe here 1.940. That basically represent the total sharing of all the solution with solution 1. It means that to what extent the remaining solutions, solution 2, 3, 4, 5, all are shared with solution number 1. So that is represented by the niche count. Naturally, more is the niche count. It means that more is the sharing of the other solutions with that particular solution, right? But here what we need to do here, that here our objective here, we want to find out the multiple solutions. So those solutions are called as basically non-dominated solutions. What is non-dominated solutions? Non-dominated solutions, it means that we have to get a Pareto friend or the set of non-dominated solutions. In the set of non-dominated solutions, no solution is absolutely inferior than the other. It means all the solutions are equally good, and therefore depending upon a particular scenario, I can use any solution out of that particular set of solutions. So it means that we will not get a single optimal solution in this particular multi-objective method, but we will get multiple solutions, and all the solutions are optimal solutions. Now since here our objective is to find out the set of or we can set up optimal solutions. Therefore here we want that it should not happen that, because if you see here that if a niche count of a particular solution is very high, it means that the other solutions have shared, or basically they have very high amount of sharing with that solution, and it may finally it means that the solution is very dominating solution, and it may happen that all the solutions finally converge into that solution, and we will get only a single solution, just like a single objective optimization, instead of getting the multiple solutions. Now here, that is what we call this, that is what we call as maintaining the diversity. So what we have to do here, that we have to maintain the diversity of population. Since we have to maintain the diversity, that can be done by reducing the, we can say, the weight of a particular objective function for which the niche count is more. So thus what we do here, first we determine distance, then we find out the sharing value, amount of sharing, and from the amount of sharing we find out the niche count. Now what we do now, the next step is we have to determine the shared fitness value. For shared fitness value, what we do, that we consider the dummy fitness. We see here, please note that we consider 1, 3, 4 are the rank 1 solution. Rank 1 solutions means that all the solutions are equally good, and therefore we assign the same dummy fitness value to those particular solutions. Here I assign the value, dummy fitness value as 50, but even if you assign it as 100 or 500, that is not going to change your solution. So here I assign the dummy fitness value, but see, the dummy fitness value must be same for all the solutions which are a particular rank. So since solution 1, 3, 4 are rank 1 solution, the dummy fitness value for all the solutions must be same. But now the issue is that even though all the solutions are rank 1 solution, but the niche count for the solutions is different. For example, niche count for this particular solution 1 is 1.94, for solution 3 it is 2.26, and for solution 4 it is 1.48. And therefore you can observe here this solution number 3 is dominating, and hence in order to maintain the diversity, we have to minimize the effect of solution number 3. So how we can do that? So what we do here, that we divide the dummy fitness value by the niche count. So we can obtain the shared fitness value at this value minus divided by niche count, we can find out shared fitness value. So thus we observed here that in order to maintain diversity, the weight of this particular solution number 3 is now reduced, or it is minimized, since we are dividing it by the niche count. So this way now we can find out the shared fitness values for 3 particular solutions which are ranked 1. Now rank 2 solutions are obviously inferior than the rank 1 solution, because they are getting the dominated non-dominated status in the second sorting. Therefore what we do here, to find out the dummy fitness value, we subtract a small number from a minimum shared fitness value of the rank 1 solution. So thus here it is 20.07, and we subtract some small number from this one arbitrarily, and we get the dummy fitness value in this particular rank 2 solution. Now once we get the dummy fitness for rank 2 solution, what we do now, here also the niche count is already calculated, then we divide this dummy fitness value with the niche count to get a shared fitness. Thus now we can observe that shared fitness for the rank 2 solution is also obtained. It means that the shared fitness values now for all the solutions in the given populations are now obtained. So this is my next task. Once we do that, then what we have to do now, depending upon their shared fitness values, we have to assign the number of onlooker bees to those particular employed bees. Therefore, we can use this particular formula to do that. So I will just explain you through the Excel sheet how we can assign the onlooker bees to the employed bees. Now we can see. Now you just, I think you remember these particular 5. These are the shared fitness value of those 5 solutions, right? Now what we do, that depending upon the shared fitness values now, please note that we get a single shared fitness value. It means that already here we have taken care of all the 3 responses. So because every response has its own fitness value, but now when we calculate shared fitness value, then already we have taken care of all those particular 3 responses. What we do now, that we take the reciprocal of this particular fitness value. Then based on this this one, then we find out the probability as 1 upon, you can see this equation formula bar, 1 upon this value multiplied by the sum. We can see this is basically the sum of this particular column. So his value is obtained by 1 upon this value, that is 0.039 divided by 0.298, and we will get this probability. Similarly, we can find out the probability of assignment for all those particular solutions, or the solution itself also represent the employed bees. So thus we find out the probabilities for all those particular solutions. The next task, we have to find out how many onlooker bees will go or we'll go to that particular employed B. So here we have 5 employed Bs, and let us consider there are 20 onlooker Bs, right? So we have to now assign the number of onlooker Bs to those particular employed Bs. So for that one, what we do now, we multiply this number. This is the probability of assignment multiplied by the total number of onlooker Bs considered. So this multiplied by 20, we can find out this value. Similarly, we multiply every value by 20 and to find out this value of M. But now since number of onlooker Bs must be integer value, so what we do, simply we convert it into corresponding integer value. So this is 3, 5, 3, 2 and 7. And if I take the sum, then this sum is 20. So thus this is how basically I assign the onlooker Bs to those particular employed Bs. What does it mean? The 3 Bs will follow the first employed B, 5 Bs will follow the second employed B, and so on. So likewise, we assign those particular employed Bs to this particular onlooker Bs to the employed. Now once you do that, yes. So already we have discussed that how to find out the number of onlooker Bs sent to that particular food source, or they will follow the particular employee. Then what we have to do now, that we have to here update the solution, because now, for example, now suppose this was your initial food source, or this was initial employed B solution, and suppose its value is, for example, 12.3. Let us assume this value as 10. Then as we have already assigned this onlooker Bs to the employed B. Suppose the 3 onlooker Bs are assigned to this employed B. So what we do now, that we have to find out now, so it means that we have to regenerate this solution for 3 times. How do we do that? So we can use this particular formula. So here basically this represents the communication between any 2 remaining Bs. For example, suppose if I consider B1 or solution 1 under consideration, say then randomly I will generate 2 solutions from the remaining solutions. Say for example solution number 3 and 5, and then we subtract the variable values of that 3rd solution and the 5th solution. So this is what the communication between these 2 Bs, and that value will be added to the corresponding value of variables of that actually solution under consideration. So this way we can update the solution, and this solution will be updated 3 times if the number of onlooker Bs assigned to this employed Bs are 3. So let us suppose this is the first position of the onlooker B, this is second position of onlooker B, and this is third position of onlooker B. So the 3 onlooker Bs are assigned to this particular employee. Then we can see here, we naturally calculate again the objective function values. So suppose objective function value here is 15.6 for that, then this is 18.7, and this is say the 12.9. And suppose our objective function is to be minimized, if we consider a minimization problem. Then what we do now, we just see that if any solution, that is new solutions are obtained, if the new solution is better than the original solution. Now unfortunately here no solution is better than, since it is minimization problem, no solution is better than the original solution, right? Therefore we will keep the original solution as it is. Otherwise, suppose if it was a maximization problem, then you can see this solution is better than this particular solution. So what we do in that case, it means that we got now the new position of food source, and the new position of food source will be 18.7. So this is how now we update the solution. So in the similar manner, the other solutions will be also getting updated, and accordingly we can find out new set of solutions. Once we get the next new set of solution, again the procedure from the step 3 is to be applied. It means that we have to again go for non-dominated sorting solutions, evaluation of shared fitnesses, find out probability, and then calculate number of onlooker Bs. Once we do that, find out the positions of the onlooker Bs using this particular formula, and you can decide now which is to be. You can decide now what would be the new positions of. Likewise, now you continuously go on updating these positions, and finally then you will see that you will get a set of solutions. Obviously, if obviously that set of solution will never exceed the population set. It means that suppose if I consider 50 solutions in my population, then I may get 20, 25 solutions, optimal solutions. That depends upon how much diversity I am able to maintain. If I am able to maintain very good diversity, then probably I could get as much as the number of optimal solution equal to the population size. Now this particular method is then applied. So this procedure is applied to this particular problem. So here we consider the abrasive water jet machining of a marble material. And here we can see the basic issue is that when we are cutting this marble material with abrasive water jet machining process, then it is characterized with high curve width, high curve taper, and large striation marks. So this is actually the original product. But then we have designed this particular parameter setting for this particular abrasive water jet machining process for the same material in using this particular process. And you can see now the abrasive water jet machining itself can give this type of product. So originally the product was like this, which was manufactured by the particular industry. But now when we apply this process, you can see a very large difference, because here we consider curve width, curve taper, and striation marks as objectives, multiple objective. We applied this multi-objective artificial equality algorithm to solve this particular problem, and then accordingly, and you can see this is the set of Pareto optimal solution, which is graphically shown over here, and the same set of solution is actually obtained over here. We can see now here we get actually here we consider 50 population size, and out of which we get the 14 Pareto optimal solutions. Please note that all the solutions, they are the optimal solutions, and every solution corresponds to certain weight of that particular objective function. It means that for example, if you see solution number 2, then solution number 2 is offering the best value with respect to curve taper, and therefore it means that high weightage is given to this particular curve taper for this solution, as compared to the weight for curve width and striation free surface. But obviously here you will not get the weight explicitly, but the weights are implicit. But there is no issue, because you will get large number of solutions, and all those solutions corresponds to certain value of weight of that particular objective function. So this is how basically we can use the multi-objective ABC algorithm to find out the weights automatically. Please note that here we have assigned the weights, even though it is a multi-objective problem, but we have not assigned the weights externally. So these weights are generated internally by the process itself, and based on that, the process is able to find out the set of Pareto optimal solutions, and the decision maker now can choose any solution, because he can choose now any solution. This is something like a nomogram. So we already prepared nomogram over here, and here the user can choose, or the process planner can choose any of this particular depending upon the situation. It means that if he want that yes, for at a particular point of time curve taper is very important for him, then he can choose solution number 2, which is already optimized solution. Similarly, if in another scenario, if curve taper is more important, then he can choose solution number 14. In some other solution, in other scenarios, if depth of striation free surface is important, he can go for 17 point, that is solution number 10. And for any other scenario, he can choose any optimal solution from this list of the 14 solutions. So this is what about we have discussed, that how we can deal with basically the multiple objective in all the 3 categories of the multi-attribute or multi-criteria decision making problems. Thank you.